Welcome to the workshop. Today's presentation, and we'll be focusing on just working. Remember that with the workshops, so I'll be building off from all the other workshops. So today, the topic that we'll be looking at is just on reading strategies and ways in which one can improve their writing. As I have said, my name is Maputi Matebula, and then I'm going to be a facilitator for the remainder of the workshop. We do have quite a number of workshops that take place, so please be on the lookout for the posters or the links that Ms. Janke will be sending. I just want to thank the two students for joining us today. With all my workshops, I just give a brief overview or just a recap from last week. So today's workshop, we are on workshop number 5. Last week we looked at, as well as on Wednesday, I see here I wrote 1 to 5, but we were on workshop 6. Okay. So with last week's workshop, we were looking at, we just touched briefly on psychosocial issues or mental health strategies that students can utilize. But this was actually in workshop 5, because that was just a common request that students had, and I said that in one of my workshops I'll just briefly go over maybe ways in which students can actually look at that. All right. And then just a reminder about consultations. Those of you who want to schedule consultations, I am available. I just need you just to send, whether it's an old assignment or a piece of work you worked on that you just need input on, you need to send it to Ms. Janke, and then you CC me. And then after that, you just need to put 2 days that you are available on, as well as time slots, and I will see which ones are okay for me to accommodate. So usually I need about 2 to 3 days in order to prepare and just look at your work and give my input. Okay, so that is just that point when it comes to just scheduling appointments and about consultations. Okay. So comments and questions and comments, I do welcome those. Just maybe towards a point where I will ask, because I've got quite a lot of slides at times, and it actually helps in order just to get through the content. If you have questions and comments, I will provide a time in the workshop where you are able to ask. Okay. So I'm going to start, and I'm just going to look at one of the topics that or issues that I know students, actually not even students, everyone, has a challenge with at times, and that is of self-care. So when we're talking about self-care, I know a lot of people tend to think, oh, it's just massages, it's you going to maybe a little bit of nap time or exercising. But when we're looking at self-care, which is quite important towards exam preparation season and towards the end of the year, it just speaks about filling your own cup. Filling your own cup actually speaks to you actually trying to revitalize yourself, so that you are able to be more proficient at work with your schoolwork, and to actually continue having an impact in the spaces which you interact with. Okay, so on a physical level, when it comes to self-care, we always advise that if you're not sleeping well or you're having challenges with sleep, you need to try put some sleep in, because it helps you with how your we call it your sleep rhythm is actually scheduled. So if you're feeling a bit, you're burnt out, or you are coming toward the end of where you are having a lot of energy, or you're not feeling fine, you need to look at putting a bit of self-care into you. So one of the tips that we're giving, we also suggest, is about stretching. Most of us actually sit on a laptop working for a long time, on a chair working for a long time. So stretching actually assists with getting a bit of blood flow to the body and stretching the muscles. So that can be a good way of incorporating self-care into your daily routine. Okay, walking, exercising, looking at maybe nutrition. You can improve a bit on that. Sometimes nutrition just also looks at hydration as well, drinking enough water during the day. We are in spring and we are moving towards the summer season, and you'll find a lot of people suffer from dehydration, headaches, fatigue. So just maybe looking at that. Then you can look at other extramural activities that work for you. It might be yoga, it might be joining a running club, it might be walking, it might be just painting. Look at what works for you in terms of your likes. Okay, then I'll move over to emotional. So emotional, if you're seeing that your battery is being depleted, you know, in terms of how you give to others, one of the tips for self-care is to look at stress management. Stress management is a broad topic, but many ways that you can manage your own personal stress. You need to look at what works for you. So you can also look at your coping skills. So with coping, we have two types of coping skills. The first coping is what we call maladaptive. So maladaptive is actually a negative coping skill. It's where you find one smokes, drinks, you know, the behavior is on the negative side in terms of coping with stress. But we usually advise for adaptive coping skills. And adaptive coping skills, you're looking at more of your functional skills where you can actually walk, you can exercise, you can maybe look at, I know others, you know, you can look at boxing or look at doing cardio. You know, that's a better way to cope in terms of when you're feeling that your emotional battery is being depleted. You can also see a therapist, and you know, you'll attend what is called compassion therapy. It's just you know, the therapy session where a therapist will hear you out, what are your challenges, and you can then be able to manage or have tips and ways to manage your stress, your emotional you know, tank if it's depleted. The other suggestion is about journaling. So journaling is just you writing your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences, and you know, it helps you to actually get to write what is actually on your mind. Okay, we'll move over to social. So with social, maybe you'll find that, you know what, also your batteries becomes depleted, and one of the ways to actually improve your self-care to protect yourself is to begin establishing boundaries. It's to start looking at having a better support system, meaning that identifying people that can support you. Then you also remaining positive. In some instances, it can assist you, but it's not to say that you need to be always positive about every situation. Okay, and then also going on social media, maybe look at, you know, I know that there are people who take what we call a social media fast, where they actually now want to start filtering their thoughts. They go on a social media fast, or they reduce their screen time. So you can look at what works for you. These are just mere suggestions. And then on a social level, you can also maybe look at if you're seeing that, you know, you're not taking care of yourself well, learning how to better communicate with your friends or your family in order to receive assistance, or looking at, as I did say, with boundaries. So it all depends on what works for you, but these are just tips and shows you in different categories as to when we are talking about self-care, what do we mean in each category. Okay, so on a spiritual side, others, you know, people tend to want to now, you know, as I told and I spoke about filtering their thoughts, having time alone, meditating, praying, going to nature. Know that other people going to nature just inspires them to clear their head, have going into a sacred space, or creating a sacred space where you stay. Others, it's just fasting and giving off their time to read the Bible. So it all depends on you and what you think can work for you. But I always suggest that incorporating a level of self-care in yourself actually works in protecting you and actually helping you to be a little bit more functional. Okay, so on a personal level, self-care, this is where we see a lot of people that are creative. So as you know, that the human body is divided into two, the brain is divided into two spheres, the left and the right brain. So you find that others, you know, people are very creative. You know, you find that you now start liking the hobby of painting. You know, you need to look at what hobby do you like, or what hobby can you start. Hobby is always something that you find interesting and that you like. Okay, so you find that other people are creative, so you want to sew, you want to start a new hobby, learn how to stitch, it all depends on what you like, right? And then one of the ways to incorporate self-care is to identify goals that can work for you. We'd normally say don't pick something that is too big. Utilize the principle of simplicity, and that is to start small, right? Then you can also look at authenticity. Authenticity, being authentic, what works for you? How do you function as an individual? So this is just more on a little bit of self-discovery. Okay, then the other area of self-care we're looking at is about safety, a healthy environment. A healthy environment, you create a healthy environment. You know, this also speaks to boundaries. You can look at, you know, what works for me. How can I create a healthy environment for myself? Are you going to start maybe at night? You'll start maybe having a better sleep routine, like I spoke about in the physical, maybe bathing at night and lighting a candle, or just blocking out time in order for you to have stability. Blocking out time would just mean that a certain time, like today, you've blocked out up until 10:30 so that you can attend a workshop. So the same with your own personal space. If you want to nap, you want to do something, you want to focus on a task, we usually advise that you block out a bit of time, and that creates some level of stability. Okay, and then with space, others prefer that, you know what, during this time, a little bit of self-care is to clean up the space that they're around. I know most of us, you know, when you're studying or you're busy with work, table tends to get a little bit messy or just occupied, because an empty surface or a flat surface always attracts, you know, objects on it. So one of the ways you can conduct your own self-care is to say, you know what, before I go to bed or before I actually take a break, let me remove 4 objects or something that is out of place on the table so that I can focus when I come back. So it all depends on you. These are just suggestions, and I'm hoping that you can start looking at what would possibly work for you. Okay, and then on the financial side, self-care also looks at, you know, taking a little dive or a view on your finances, saving, budgeting, looking at your money management skills. Are they good? Are they not good? Are you having challenges? You know, and then looking at paying bills, also having boundaries. You know, people that are asking for money, or that you tend to give out money to and who don't pay, and you're having unnecessary pressure. So this just calls for a review. I know that on YouTube there's quite a lot of good good coaches, not coaches per se, but good people that actually speak about money management. I'm not talking Forex, I'm just talking people that can assist with good money management. And I know that with Momentum, not that I'm promoting, I'm just giving an example of what I've come across, is that they have a Velocity Club. And that's a club that I think you join a subscription of some sort, I think per month, and they just look at your finances and give you tips on how to manage and achieve certain goals. So you can also, if you are in need of such assistance, go to any financial institution and they can allocate financial advisor to assist you. Okay, and then with your own personal work, spoke about time management. So time management also speaks to blocking out your time, looking at what works for you. Are you a night person or a day person? Okay, so you find that other people function much better at night in terms of working, or others during the morning. So it all depends on what works for you. We still speak again about boundaries when it comes to work. Boundaries means that just look at your level of the tasks that you have at work or with schoolwork. If too much work is coming in and none is going out, there's definitely going to be a problem. So it means that you can't accept too much work, and if you're not having any output, because what that will create is just a backlog for you. All right, and also looking at taking breaks. We looked at stretching, and I look at another technique that that you can actually utilize when taking a break, and we call it it's a breathing technique, but that will go through. Okay, so here on the slide, it just basically focuses on other ideas in terms of self-care that you can look at. It's maybe taking a warm or cold shower, depends on your preference. Having a chat with an old friend or someone that you know inspires you. Experiencing nature, we looked at reading books or books also have a level of influence. They can have a level of influence on one via mentorship, changing your diet, meditation, loving yourself more, writing a journal, and taking a quick nap. And with a quick nap, I always suggest that if you are a person that is able to nap, always set an alarm. One. Number two, also have a brief little meeting with yourself to say, so and so, we're going to take a nap for the next 2 hours. We're not going to panic, because I know that a lot of people tend to panic. They've got a deadline coming ahead, and they are not functional, but a nap will actually help to revitalize you. So a suggestion is always to have a chat with yourself. It's a way of calming yourself down, to say, we're going to take this time to nap so that we can recover in order to be functional. And we're going to put our phone on silent, so whichever missed calls come through, we'll attend to them once you are up. So it's just that brief little meeting that you need to have with yourself so that you can nap in peace. Otherwise, what happens is your mind doesn't switch off, and you are unable to actually take that 30-minute or 1 hour or 2 hours to nap, and your mind starts to wander off. Okay. So there's a technique that is called grounding. So with grounding, it's actually a way to reduce any, during before exam time, or just a season that is coming that is going to be a little bit intense. We always suggest grounding. It's called the grounding technique. It helps to reduce a bit of anxiety, symptoms or feelings of anxiety, as well as intense emotions, when you're feeling overwhelmed. So when it comes to your body, we always suggest that you lie on the ground. So we want you to feel we're grounding you. So when we're talking about grounding, maybe just something that I can suggest or allow you to think about is to think about when you are walking barefoot. You're sort of feeling the ground, or walking on the grass or on the pavement. That is one of the techniques that we do suggest. It's called grounding. Okay. So another form is, if you don't want to walk barefoot, you lie on the ground, you press your toes onto the floor, and you squeeze. All right. And you squeeze them, and then you, you squeeze them, and then you release. So you hold for 5 seconds, you squeeze, you release. So that encourages you just to try and connect with your body. Okay. Another technique with grounding, you can play with Play-Doh or even a stress ball. You can squeeze it a few times in your hand, or a tennis ball with your feet. Just rub it on, or I know other people used to use an orange, but it's up to you basically. Just it's a way of you grounding. So with your feet, rolling an orange or any round object that can allow you to have some level of stimulus, okay, or sensation. And then when it comes to your 5 senses, a suggestion is you can wear your sweatshirt or t-shirt or a dress or any item that you like. You can spray your favorite perfume or use essential oils. Okay, so that stimulates your 5 senses. It's a way of calming you down, or making a cup of tea, coffee, or something that works for you. Okay. So the other part that we suggest is about self-soothing. You can take a shower or bath, or found a grounding object like I had suggested, like an orange or a tennis ball or stress ball that you can roll on your feet or hold in your hand. Grab it for a few seconds, release that. Okay. Lighting a candle, apparently it calms other people down. Others like scented candles that have a certain fragrance, maybe vanilla, orange, depends what you like. All right. So that is just one of the ways of grounding, and just trying to remove a little bit of the stress that is on your mind. Okay. So when you observe, you can, so another technique that added to the grounding technique we suggest is of you being observant. So you can describe an object in detail. Maybe you can, like a coloring book, you can look at an object, or even on the internet, there's many games that you can look at, and then you can actually now start, looking at your how much detail you can identify, looking at the color, the texture, the shadow, the light, and the shapes. So it's just to see if your recall your ability to remember shapes and anything that applies to that object is good. Okay. The other is of practicing your breathing exercise that I will go into. I'll go into this particular breathing technique that out of everything today in terms of self-care, before I start teaching on the different on reading and writing, it's to maybe try and remember this this breathing technique, and also just something that you would pick out from self-care. All right. So the other part, we're looking at distractions. Find so a suggestion is to find the square or basically find out the square or green objects in the room. So maybe you can, even if it's not green, you can maybe say that look at maybe a room and say, let me look at any object that is orange and see maybe how many you can identify, or purple or green or yellow, whatever color maybe you are looking at, and count by maybe looking at, maybe we'll count in 2s or 7s or group them in pairs. So it's up to you. So it's just a suggestion. Okay. My next slide just looks at you learning how to breathe as part of self-care and taking care of your mental health. Breathing is very important. A lot of the times you find that a student is overwhelmed in terms of work or a certain situation that they're coming across. Excuse me. We always suggest that breathing, so if, let's say, I'm speaking to a student and I can hear that they're rushing too much, or they're unable to utter what is it that they want to say, I always say, take a deep breath, let's start, and then I can hear what you're saying. So it actually works a little bit better. Okay. So there's a technique, we call it the 4-7-8 breathing technique. So the breathing technique allows you to provide a bit of oxygen to a little bit more oxygen to the brain. You sometimes find, because of the posture in which we are sitting at, when you're sitting in your chair, you're actually maybe slouching, you're not sitting straight, and you're not providing enough oxygen to the brain. Okay. And you might feel a little bit dizzy or lightheaded, or you're not focused enough. This can allow you to calm down as well. Okay. So it's not only just to provide oxygen, but it's to help you if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're nervous as well. You can try this exercise. So you breathe in. Maybe let's try and do it. I know that the mics are off, but just to show you how it actually works, and I'll take you through it. So in through your nose, you'll breathe for 4 seconds. I will count. And then once you're done, you will hold your breath for 7 seconds. I will count. And then you'll exhale through your mouth. So it's in through your nose 4 seconds. You'll hold the breath for 7 seconds, and out through your mouth. Okay, so let's just try it. And then before I continue, I'll get some input. So in through your nose 4 seconds. So you'll breathe in through your nose. Let's go. And then you'll hold for 7 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you'll breathe out for the next 8 seconds throughout your mouth. But slowly, and you try press out all the air out of your lungs. So that is a technique that we actually do utilize just for you to help you calm down. The number of repetitions we do request for this is about 3 to 4 times, and then you'll feel a little bit better. You should feel a bit better. Okay. So you might ask me, as I have shared about the breathing technique. I've mentioned the chat. You see the triangle. You hold for 4 seconds. You breathe out for 4 seconds or 8 seconds, and then you breathe in again. So you can do it in 4s, or you can do 4-7-8 or 4-4-4. Depends on what actually you are comfortable with as well. Okay. So you might ask, what is the breathing technique, or what is 4-7-8 breathing technique? So 4-7-8 breathing is a type of pranayama or focused breathing that uses controlled breathing to improve physical and mental health. So Dr. Andrew Weil created it to bring a person's nervous system out of fight or flight response. So 478 breath work stimulates the vagus nerve, which engages the body's relaxation response and can positively impact on cardiovascular, respiratory, and gastrointestinal system. So this was just a brief background as to where does the 478 breathing technique originate from. Okay. So there's also something that one can try, but it all depends on your personal preference and what works for you. So bubble breathing, imagine you have a wand, there's actually a wand that children have that has a lot of bubbles, usually sold in the streets or a flea market. So you have a wand or just any object, and you can imagine yourself blowing bubbles. You take a deep breath through your nose, slowly breathe out through your mouth. Same technique, and you repeat. So it's a 473, but now you are imagining yourself breathing bubbles. Okay. So before I go on to the reading techniques that I have prepared, I just wanted to get an input. Are there any comments or questions regarding what I have said, what I have shared in terms of your self-care and the breathing techniques? Can you maybe just highlight if you have utilized any of the self-care techniques or come across it?
Yes, thank you. It's the first time I'm using the 478 technique, ne? And as you were doing it, I was doing it with you also. I'm feeling different from what I was feeling before. So it really works. I'm going to continue using it. Thank you.
Thank you. So just try it 3 to 4 times, and it's any time that you feel that you're feeling overwhelmed, or you just need to just help your body just calm down a little bit. It should help. Thank you for that. Anyone else? And then in terms of self-care, any tips that you are going to incorporate or that you're thinking of looking at? Mutsidisi has just mentioned that she will try the 478 breathing technique. And anyone, will you try the breathing technique or any self-care tips that I've suggested?
I don't know if it's Katlego on the chats.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just read what she said.
Sure.
She says, I've come across the breathing techniques and I like it. It really does help my brain calm down.
Okay, no, that is good. And just continue using what works for you. Hey, if that works for you, please use it. And yeah, that should be effective. And then with self-care, anyone here looking at utilizing or adapting something, new habits? So with today, we'll be looking at reading strategies, different types of reading strategies that one incorporate. And just to reiterate again, I know that exam season is slowly approaching, and you might ask yourself, where would I need all of this information? Where am I going to apply it, implement it? My suggestion is always to know that the academic journey is quite diverse, and this is just one of the little nuggets that you can put in your backpack. When you are writing an assignment next year, coming across any academic piece of work, you will be able to have a better sense of, okay, now what type of reading strategy am I using? In the previous workshops, for those of you who have missed, you are more than welcome to request the slides and the recordings just to give you a glimpse of what has been covered. So basically with each workshop, we try go a little bit in depth in terms of providing students with a bit of understanding in terms of ways to improve their academic writing or parts that will enable you to improve your academic writing. Okay, so I'm just going to look here at maybe some of you might ask yourself, what is strategic reading? Basically, strategic reading means utilizing or using specific techniques for understanding, studying, and learning. So there are 4 types of learners or readers. We have your tacit readers, we have your aware readers, we have your strategic readers and your reflective readers. Before I continue, just to provide a bit of an explanation with regards to the 4 types of readers, with the students that are here, have you come across any of these concepts before as to the types of readers that one can get, one can come across?
Mutsikisi says no, ma'am.
Okay, all right. So with all the workshops that we'll be conducting, there's always going to be something that you learn or you'll hear of, other concepts you might have heard of, but it's always just to add on the knowledge. It's always to increase and to add on the knowledge that you already have. Okay. So we have what we call tacit readers or learners. Tacit readers are aware of their, we call it the metacognitive knowledge. They do not think about particular strategies for learning and reading. They merely accept it if they know something, if they know something or not. Okay, so it's just like with a new concept or in class, whereby you know, a lecturer teaches on a certain concept. So if you find yourself to be a tacit learner reader, you will hear what the lecturer is saying and you will accept because it's a new concept that you're coming across, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean, just with what I'm describing, the different learners and readers, it doesn't mean that if you are a tacit learner reader, then it means that you can't be the other parts as well. You can be a little bit of each or more onto one side. Okay, then you get what we call an aware learner or reader. An aware learner knows about some some of the kinds of thinking that they can do, as generating ideas, finding evidence. However, thinking is not necessarily deliberate or planned. So if you're an aware learner or reader, you would be one of those learners. So let's say with a tacit learner, you can start by being a tacit learner, taking what the lecturer is saying. Then you can take it one step up and you can actually look at finding evidence and saying, oh, okay, I've read about such a concept. Or when you go home, conducting a little bit of your research, looking at evidence, you know, what is theory saying about this particular topic? Are there any other, you know, readings or issues that are taking place around the world or in South Africa with regards to this particular topic? So usually you'll find that it's learners who are more aware or who read more that we can classify as aware learners. And then you can have what we call a strategic learner or as reader, who organizes their thinking by using problem solving, grouping, classifying, evidence seeking, and decision making. So this is just another way of actually, you know, when you're writing your assignment or about to prepare for an exam, you can look at your past papers, look at problem solving, grouping your different concepts. It all depends on the type of learner and reader you are. Okay, and then we also have what we call your reflective learner or reader. Reflective learner or reader are not only strategic about their thinking, but they also reflect upon their learning while it is happening, considering the success or not of any strategies they are using. Okay, so with a reflective learner, it's just a learner who reflects a little bit more. They tend to take from all the other 3 strategies, and they also tend to think, you know, you're reflecting, so you're thinking, you're digesting what is being learned. Just like today, you might find that you are more of a tacit or a reflective learner. Reflective learner, you're going to, after this workshop, think about what has been taught and then think of a way you can actually adopt it, you know, so you don't have to take a decision now. And then if you're an aware learner, you might find that maybe about self-care, you might want to do a little bit of research, dig a little bit deeper. Maybe you are finding the area of physical awareness more interesting, so you'll do your research on that. Or on finances, you can do research on that. So I'm just showing you illustrations of when we are speaking about the different types of learners and readers, so that you have an understanding. I didn't just want to provide you with the bullet points and then not explain further. So these are the 4 categories of what we call the metacognitive learners. Okay, by the author, he's called Perkins. So if you want to maybe look at maybe looking at if you're an aware learner or a strategic one, you want to further dig into his type of writing about metacognitive cognitive learners, you're more than welcome to further look at that. Okay. And then when you are reading an assignment or any piece of work, like I did mention just when we began our workshop, to say that even though we are approaching exam season, but you want to maybe allow me to look at a previous assignment that is not marked, and you want us to, even if it's marked, but give me the original that you had initially sent through to your lecturer, I can then provide my input and advise you on maybe in terms of ways to improve your writing. We can look at that. So with reading, there are always strategies, you know, in terms of that we advise. It's not to say that it's cast in stone, but it's just advice that is provided. Okay. So when you're done writing any particular piece of work, we always say have a checklist in order to see that you've covered everything. You know, read the title. You know, is there a title that is written? Is there a cover page? Are the parts which have to be in italics? Example, in one of the workshops I covered extensively the Harvard referencing guide in terms of what is expected and how you can actually look at different sources. And you find that in some parts, you need to have the work in italics in your reference list. So just to look at that, so that would focus on your reference list. And the other checklist would be to look at any pictures or read the captions. Okay, so if you're using visuals, so in one of my workshops, I looked at, you know, I know that we have different students from different departments. Others use visuals in terms of when they are writing or they are working on work. So you need to look at if you have put pictures or tables in your work, have you actually written you know, a caption beneath it to explain to the marker what is it that you're writing? Okay, because I always suggest you know, just from writing, is that you always need to write as though the lecturer is not actually the one teaching the subject, or the marker. It does not actually is not actually part of the course itself. Okay, so here we have about reading comprehension. Read comprehension questions, not answers. So you need to look at you know, your checklist needs to focus at, have all the questions for the assignment been answered? Okay, not just only your answers, but the questions, have they all been answered? So that's a checklist. Then you look at your answers after that. Okay. Another suggestion is to reread the passage. Reread the passage. It just speaks to a piece of work, maybe a paragraph that you have actually written. If you don't want to read an entire paragraph, you know, or an entire page, rather group it passage by passage. Okay. All right, and then you need to also read each question and highlight the keywords to see that actually you've actually answered the assignment question itself. Last week and the week before, we looked at a technique called PEEL, and it actually looks at you finding a point that you'll focus on, and also different sources of evidence that you can look at in order to support the, you know, your writing. So you'll find evidence in the text to support each question, and then you'll answer the question using the evidence. So if you want to look at maybe the previous workshop that was on Wednesday evening, you can actually take a look at it in order to maybe obtain a little bit more understanding on the technique that we call the PEEL technique. Okay, so with this particular slide, just focuses on reading strategies, a checklist that we do advise that you may use. You can adapt it to your kind of style. Remember, everything is not cast in stone. It's all dependent on the course you are part of and the requirements that the assignment may require. But I always suggest that before you submit an assignment, always look at, before reading the assignment, maybe evidence that you need, have your own proper checklist. During your reading time, have your own checklist as well to see, have you covered everything, and also after reading as well. So you need to look at what works for you. But if you do request these slides, then you can actually look a little bit in depth as to the possible suggestions that are made. So with the slide, just moving on to my next slide, we have the what we call the 4 types of comprehension questions. So it's just when answering questions in your assignment, you know, there's what we call the right here. Right here, the answer is there in one spot in one passage. And one of the ways of writing or just illustrating to the marker is to show the answer. You know, if there's a specific question that has been asked that you answer, you can then start writing, maybe saying that according to author so-and-so, you know, then you state your evidence, you know, because it's right here, it's easier to locate. And then also, you know, another way to start your sentence is you can say, you can also start it with a question as well. Last week on Wednesday, we actually looked at a hook. And when you're writing, it's just a way of you trying to catch or attract the reader. So maybe with the with this particular quadrant right here, you can look at my previous slide where I looked at a hook. It can give you a little bit of an understanding as to how do you then look at different ways of writing and attracting your marker to actually be interested in what you've written. Okay, then another way to show to answer or show that you're actually answering a comprehension question is to think and to search. This requires you as the student to think about different parts of the passage or paragraph that work together. And one of the ways you can answer it is to say that the main idea of the passage is to, or the main idea of the assignment is to cover, you know, then you actually list the concepts that you'll be focusing on, and maybe using a hook as to what has caused a particular issue in history to be a concern. You can use it like that. And also another way to illustrate thinking and searching is to compare and to contrast. Okay. And to compare and to contrast just simply says that you're actually comparing, you're looking at differences, you know, you similarities and differences. Okay. And then the other quadrant of illustrating comprehension, you're looking at the author, you're using ideas and information that is stated directly in the passage to answer the question. And then the suggestion here is to think about what you have read and formulated, you know, in your own opinion. So author and me just simply speaks to evidence that you have found, and also here now beginning to have a voice in your writing, your view, your perception as well. Okay, then the last quadrant here looks at your own, on my own, meaning that you are actually the one who's writing your own opinion or experience. You can this can be answered by using your background knowledge on a topic. You know, whenever you're writing an assignment, there's always some idea that you have of a topic or a specific stance you wish to take. So you can actually now bring out your voice here. This is also another illustration of one of the ways that the marker can actually have an understanding as to what you know, what is your understanding and what is your stance. This type of question does not usually appear on tests or reading or tests of reading comprehension, but it does require you to refer to the passage. So even in an assignment, you know, your own opinion is formulated based on what is written. So you can say in your own opinion, or based on my experience, you know, this is where you're linking and showing your understanding of this particular topic itself. Okay, so this is just an illustration of the 4 types of comprehension questions that you tend to answer whenever you're writing any piece of academic work. You'll always find parts of these quadrants in your passages. Okay, and just to highlight again, like I did share, and I'm always sharing with the other students as well, it's just personal preference, but it works better. I found it over the years, is that I know students tend to struggle with introductions. So I was attending a workshop, I think 3 weeks ago, at University of Johannesburg. It was just an online seminar about master's graduates and PhD candidates on how to write a better introduction. And you might ask yourself, sure, but an introduction, I mean, what's the big deal about it? Just goes to show that, like I did say, the academic journey does require you to continue learning. So you coming to this workshop today, you might find that, oh, but you know what, it's just about reading techniques, but how am I going to use it? And you'll find that in a year or 6 months time, or, you know, whenever you're registered for another course, it's easier for you to understand, you know, when your marker says that you've not incorporated enough theory, then you need to look back at the techniques that I've suggested, and you can, you know, it's one of the ways to improve your writing. And just going back to the learning how to write an introduction, it's very important to write an introduction because it actually entices the marker and introduces the marker or the reader into what exactly are you going to be talking about. And there's different ways to write it as well, and to introduce concepts. There's always room for improvement on the academic journey. There's always learning. So I'm just saying that don't take it for granted that, I know how to write, but there's always ways that other academics have improved, you know, found ways that works a little bit better. Okay. And just with an introduction, suggestion is to always write it at the end. And you might ask me, oh, but it's the introduction. How do I write it at the end? Remember, with your introduction, it's better to write it at the end after you've written all your information, or you've written all your paragraph, all your passages. It makes a lot more sense for you to cover and to highlight to the marker and to the reader what is it that your assignment covers. If you write your introduction at the beginning, at times you tend to miss out on other parts that you might write in during your write-ups. Okay. So another reading strategy or ways to look at improving your reading is we call it the question-answer relationship. So the QAR strategy teaches a student how to use a comprehension question to figure out what kind of answer is to be provided. So you need to review the type of questions below and and use the chart to determine the type of comprehension question. Okay, so again, we'll just use a different, we'll go back to the 4 types of comprehension questions in the previous slide. Remember, the type of question that you might ask is about right here. So right here, the description is, the answer is right here in the text, and the question usually uses words from the text. Okay, so the question here might start with who, what, when, where, how. All right, so who is responsible for? What is? So that kind of question just provides your description of it right here, okay, in the text. Think and search type of question. The description that is provided is that the answer is in the text, but you have to look for it in several different places to form meaning. The question begins with how did, and then you need to, it might say compare or contrast the following, find an example of, describe, or what has caused. This is one of the ways a question may be phrased. Okay. And then if you're looking at author and me, it usually allows you to use background knowledge, excuse me, and the text to make an interference. So you predict what will happen. So the question starts with predict or provide in your own assumption what will happen. Why did the author maybe illustrate the following, or think of why did a certain theorist, you know, if you're different from a different school of thought or different faculty, they might focus on a particular author, you know, or a guru in your in your work. And then the other part is what would be a good title for, or what is the main idea when it comes to. So this is when author and me are utilized. Then the last part is on my own. Use your background knowledge and tell your opinion. So the question would begin with, how would you feel if? So this needs more of your background knowledge and your understanding, your voice coming through. What would you do if, and what, in your opinion, about, and do you agree with? So just to also, it enables the reader to also get an opinion or an understanding of where your stance is in a particular topic. Are you for it? Are you against it? Do you agree? Do you not agree? Okay. Okay, so you might ask, in terms of comprehension strategies, how can I understand the text, or what is it that I'm reading? There's just a few suggestions that are made, and one of them is that you make connections. You make connections. You connect, you relate your reading to yourself. This is where you can utilize your own opinions to form your own understanding. You can make a summary. You can use keywords by pulling out the most important information, or using facts to explain in your own words as well. That's one of the ways of doing it in an assignment. The other part, I'm basically reading from the left, and then I will continue, then move over to the right. You can look at questioning the text. Good readers ask regular questions about their reading to improve their understanding. So if, let's say, you've written work and you're not clear if it's making sense, you can always ask someone else to read it, or ask, someone like me, or maybe a lecturer, to give you a bit of guidance as to if you're on the right track or not. Okay, so it all depends on your comprehension strategy that you as a student would select. Okay, then the next category here, it's that you are you're making interferences. So what you will do is you'll combine clues from the story with your own experience. So you'll be linking your own story to your own experience, and then to also learn what the author doesn't tell you. This is, remember, from your own experience. It might differ from what you have read the author is actually suggesting or mentioning. Okay. And then the other part is to find the main idea. The main idea is, what is the point of this text or this assignment that I'm writing? Is the author trying to send a message to you? So if you're writing, if you're writing about a main idea, you'll always incorporate what the different authors are writing, but also mention in your own words what your understanding of the text is. It's always important for the reader to always get your input. Okay. So another part is that you make a prediction, or an assumption rather. You make an informed guess about what will happen. You're using evidence. This is where, as a student, your voice comes out to say, this is your understanding, your prediction, your analysis on a particular topic. Okay. So just going back to, you'll see that, especially on the news, if, let's say, there's a big topic that has been taking place, or an incident has taken place in whichever province, they'll always get legal experts to come and give and provide information, evidence, and a bit of clues as to their predictions, or political analysts will provide their predictions on a particular issue. So this just provides you with an idea. Okay. Another way to synthesize the text is to connect the pieces to link previous knowledge with new information. So remember that as a student, you are not a blank canvas. There's a lot of knowledge that you also come with, experience and understanding, in a different way of viewing the world. So this helps with, when you're writing any piece of work, to also incorporate your understanding and information about comprehension and understanding. All right. So another way is to visualize the text. You create detailed pictures in your mind about the characters or what you're going to write about, and the settings as you read the book or you read, your assignment. So depends if you're a visual person or not. It all depends on, with reading and learning, it depends on your approach and what works for you. Just to go back again, remember, we looked at the different types of readers and learners. So you need to look at which do you think you are, and you'll see that as you go along with any assignment, you'll start adapting it according to whichever approach works a little bit better for you. Excuse me. And then we have what we call, when we are reading any assignment or questions, we have, reading questions. You always look at the character, the plot, the, your text connections, and your reading strategies. So, okay, so just for the sake of maybe just providing a little bit of context. So let's say you're writing an assignment. You're not necessarily writing a fiction or a non-fiction book, but you'll always, with a reading strategy in your assignment, you'll always summarize work, let's say towards your conclusion, you'll always summarize or provide your understanding as to what is it that you have read, from a different source. All right. And then what do you think is going to happen? So this also just speaks to predictions. So if you are in your particular assignment wanting to offer your own advice, your own solution, you can predict to say that I think that, with this particular issue in South Africa, it is going to impact us in the future or not. This is you providing your own input, okay? All right. And then also this is just, I was just illustrating to you different ways or ideas that you can use to actually look at a reading strategy. So you can take further look at this particular slide, but this just looks at your characters, if you are writing a non-fiction or a certain type of writing or narrative work, you can take this approach. But I will urge that you do request the slides and you can take a little bit of a focus on this particular slide. There's more information that you require, or you want to have a chat, or you want to consult, you are more than welcome to write to Ms. Janke, and then you'll CC me and request an appointment time. Okay, so just as we move on, strategies for reading again. One of the tips that we are always advising for is that you need to clarify, you need to connect, you need to evaluate, predict, and to question. So I have answered some of these, but we can just look through a little bit of the illustrations that have been suggested, and we'll take it from there. So when you're reading, a strategy for reading is to always clarify. So a question that is asked is, do you understand the story, or do you understand your assignment that you have written, or the question that the lecturer is asking? What you can also do is to pause to review what you have read in order to answer the question. So you could be a tacit learner here or a reflective learner before you clarify. See, so you need to look at what type of learner are you and then take it from there. All right. And then you need to also look at connect. How do you relate to the story? Find a way to make a personal connection to the story or to your particular assignment. Apply this to your own life. Okay, so this is where we did say that it's important for, as a student, to bring about your own personal history or your understanding of a particular topic. Okay, so evaluate. We say that do you agree or disagree with the events of the story? So with the events of the story, it means it can also look at do you agree or disagree with what the author, you can look at different pieces of information or literature. Do you agree with what the lecturer or the author you're reading is saying in terms of a particular topic? You are more than welcome as students. We always advise that you become critical thinkers. You form your own opinions about a particular topic, but based on what you've read. Okay, so reading is so important. as well. And I know that we did touch a little bit again on predict. So with predicting, we say that what do you think will happen next? You know, this is your prediction as an academic in progress. You know, you take a guess when reading to find out if you're on the right track or not. But with your predictions, you always it's always based on opinion as well. But opinions, remember, you need to back them up. Okay. So the question is so you can so what the question is, what do you know about this topic, and what words are you familiar with or not familiar with? So with questions, you would look at what is it that you're not understanding, or as you can look at the first question is what is unclear. So what are you not sure of in this particular assignment or the question that is being asked? So this just allows you to be more of a critical thinker and to start questioning when you're reading, okay? So the slide just was just unpacking a little bit more, saying when we are saying reading or trying to understand an assignment question or an assignment itself, what goes into it? What are the different puzzle pieces that actually go into it? Okay, right. Moving on, suggestions that have been made here are that there's more comprehension strategies that I would like to highlight with you. We've spoken about some, but I'm just re-emphasizing so that providing a little bit more illustrations so that you can have understanding. Okay, we spoke about making connections, connect what you read and what you already know. So it's so important that you do that. Okay, we spoke about that. So you'll read literature, look at evidence, and then you'll connect. And then infer, use your own schema and clues from the book to understand what you read. We have spoken about your own opinion here. And then we spoke about those who are visual people, or you are going to provide a table or a picture. You create, you need to highlight or provide a caption. But in your mind as well, you can also be creative and create a picture for you on how you're going to actually unpack this particular question. We spoke about asking questions. So you'll ask questions to help you understand. Okay, so this is when you're not clear. You'll ask further questions. Okay. So here we are looking at also determining importance. Think about the most important idea. So here you would be looking at your keywords. What is important? What would be the main idea that you, or the main issue that you would need to cover in your assignment or in your exam question as well? All right. So when you synthesize, meaning that you're bringing ideas together, you're weaving them, you're knitting items together. So bring ideas together to make a new idea. So this also, when we are speaking of synthesizing, it's linked to making connections as well. So it's what you read, it's what you write, and also what the authors are also saying, but you're incorporating everything in so that it flows. Okay. The other part is monitoring your understanding. Check to make sure that you're understanding what you've read. So this is you proofreading your work and trying to see you know, ways in which you can improve your work. So in our last workshop, we looked at proofreading and editing, and we covered it a little bit more. Okay. So the other strategy that one can use is to fix up strategies. Use strategies when you get stuck on a word, so you can see what actually works better for you. Okay, so the strategy, remember that there's a slide that I previously shared on what you need to do as a strategy. So we said that before reading, so the strategy that we use is what we call preview. It's just like when you're opening a document on your laptop, the options that you sometimes get is before you open it, you can preview it before downloading the actual document. So just like with any assignment, before reading, you preview. And the description here is that students activate prior knowledge and make predictions about what they will learn in the text. So it's an assignment question is offered, or an exam question is actually provided. So you would just need to say, on this particular topic, what is it that I know or I'm aware of? Okay. During your reading process, you will click and clunk. Okay, you will get a gist of what is being said. So you would be able to identify the most important information obtained with each section of the text. The other part is that students monitor their comprehension vocabulary by applying your own strategies of unknown words. So you will see which words can you utilize, you know. Are you going to use more descriptive words, conjunctions, verbs? What works for you? You know, this is notes that you'll be taking when reading, while you're reading. Okay. Then, sorry, on the last block, you would look at after reading, you would wrap up. So wrap up, you would say students generate questions and answers based on information of the passage if they've of what they've just read. So after wrapping up, you would able to see that the questions that have been generated, they have answers, and you actually have acquired a bit of more information. 3 stages of reading. So we are done with the comprehension strategies, and now I just wanted to focus on the 3 stages of reading which we were looking at. Remember, this just speaks to before, during, and after. Similar. So before, so the step that one, you know, after a topic is introduced on your assignment, you can brainstorm what you know about the topic, predict what might happen. This is just a summary. And then during your reading, you can reread the sentence. You can look at your prefixes, your suffixes, your root words, meaning that you can look at the links, you know, just to understand what are the key words that are being highlighted here, or what is the points that I have to focus on. And then after, you need to write you know, your answers to the questions. You know, this sums up, you know, your point of view, what is important, and to clear up any misconceptions that, you know, you have identified in when you're reading. You might find that when it comes to misconceptions, is that you find that most of, you know, literature that you would read on a certain topic, you will find a group or academic people that are for a topic and against a topic. So you would need to then, in that sense, just clear up some misconceptions as to, from your own understanding, what is important and what is not important. Okay. So again, continuing with reading strategies, the suggestion here is to understand that reading strategies, these are just tips in order for you to have a more in-depth understanding as to what is important. So strategy 1 is knowing what you want. Strategy number 2 is knowing how deeply to study the material. You know, how deeply to look at evidence pertaining to a particular issue. Strategy 3, active reading, which we've spoken about. It's you going through the work, the literature, the different books, different sources in order for you to better understand. Strategy 4 is how to study different sorts of material. So in one of my workshops, I actually looked at ways in which, you know, different types of journals that you can look at, different types of academic sources actually that one can focus on if you really want to, you know, answer assignment questions, you know. So there's different sources, there's journals, there's government gazettes, depending on the topic that you need to be looking at. All right. But the basics are the basics, and they are all the same when it comes across answering assignment questions. Okay. Strategy number 4 is how to study different sorts of material. We've covered that now about the academic sources. Strategy 5 would be reading whole subject documents. Whole subject documents, that's if you have time. Okay. So whole subject documents, sometimes you find that a dissertation or a thesis, you know, is a whole subject document. But you don't have time to read through the entire document because it's probably like, what, 200 pages? So you would normally look at And the abstract, does the abstract speak to you about information that you want? If yes, then you shoot over to chapter 2. Chapter 2 is usually your literature review that will provide you with context about a particular topic. And then if you further want to obtain an in-depth analysis, you can then look at your findings. So that would be in chapter 4. Chapter 4 or 5 of any dissertation looks at the findings of that particular research study. Okay. So even in a journal article, whole document, you don't have to read the entire journal. You can look at the abstract and the findings. That's usually where, when we are scheming work, that's how it actually helps. Because otherwise, imagine if you're writing an assignment or a dissertation, you can't read everybody's dissertation in depth. You will not finish. So you just usually take what's important. Okay. Strategy number 6 is using glossaries and technical documents. So those technical documents, I have just provided a brief description, and depending on your on how you use the library, you can use glossaries. I've always suggested that, the librarians are so useful. Please make use of them. If you are in need of a book from a different institution, request a book. You can request, it's what we call interlibrary loans. So usually those books, I think you can borrow them for undergrad. It's usually a week or 2, and then postgrad, I know that it's about 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So it's always know that you don't always have to utilize books from your particular institution. If there's a book from Wits, UCT that you want, universities have a relationship with each other where books can be utilized for some time and from other institutions and brought back. Okay. But this you will need to just find out from your librarian, who are very helpful and can provide you with a bit of understanding. Okay. So again, I don't think I want to touch much on it. I think you will read on this particular slide. The main reason for this is you can, it's what we have covered about predicting, visualizing, connecting. It's just a summary, yet again, repetition that I can ask that you do take a look at. All right. So, so there's what we call an anchor chart when it comes to reading strategies. And with reading strategies, I'm just going to highlight the points that are made. It's that reading strategies improve your comprehension, meaning they improve your understanding of the work that is before you. It doesn't necessarily mean just an assignment question, but it also just means that the concepts that are being taught in your particular course itself. Okay, so with reading strategies, we always say that you need to set a purpose. Always come to the lecturer prepared, ask clarifying questions. You need to make connections. We spoke about making connections earlier on, and then we spoke about annotate the text. We used about knowing and using prior knowledge to make predictions. We spoke about visualization. This is just also now another summary. And we said that, you need to, as and when you read documents, you need to stop and summarize and also make summaries and interferences and what actually works for you. All right. So this is just a basic summary. And in the next coming slides as well, you will just start seeing more of what we have spoken about earlier, but now just in a visual sense. And we are just highlighting now. Okay. So I don't know how to say this this author, but I've tried it. Scobos, Reading Rope. This is an author from 2001 who was actually just giving a description of when we are reading what forms. It's sort of like how he describes it as you're actually roping or tying a rope together, fastening it, and what forms part of it. We have looked at it, but I'm just going to just now a little bit in depth, just look at concepts that you are aware of or might have come across, or they are new to you, just so that you are aware that in future, when you are reading a certain topic, concept, or an assignment, this is what you need to focus on. Okay. So we look at background knowledge. in terms of language comprehension, meaning are you understanding the language or the terms that are used in this particular course? Vocabulary knowledge, are you aware of the jargon? It's the language that is actually used. Okay, the language structures of the actual assignment or the actual topic. Verbal reasoning, is there any verbal reasoning, that you need to provide? Literacy knowledge, it's knowledge that you find in evidence or in your own assumptions. This is where you incorporate it. So remember, we are trying to tie the rope together. Then there's what we call word recognition. Then there's phonological awareness. We have decoding and spelling, sight recognition. So these concepts in the other slides, they will be unpacked further. But I just wanted to first highlight them to you, and then we can then just look at them a little bit in depth. So you would increasingly, you are becoming more strategic with your language comprehension, and then with the type of words you are using, your word recognition, you are becoming automatic, meaning that it's becoming a little bit easier. Tying the rope becomes, so it's starting to flow. Okay. All right, so moving along, same slide as just the previous one. This is just a little bit more colorful. And for the readers that are aware or want to do a bit of research on this author, you are more than welcome. In terms of, he looks at, if we utilize language comprehension correctly, as well as using the right words when we are tying the rope, this helps a student become a fluent, skilled reader or a skilled learner. So what will happen is in your assignment or even in your exam answering, you'll be able to be fluent in execution. Fluent in execution meaning that you'll be more effective in actually completing the task, and coordination of actually recognizing which words are supposed to be used in a particular subject matter. Remember, with each course, you need to utilize the concepts or the language that is utilized. You can't, let's say you're studying social work and you're using words or maybe psychology or education. You have to use the jargon that is actually used in that particular course. Okay, so basically from this particular colorful slide, we are then going to unpack what we mean by background knowledge, vocabulary, language, verbal, literacy, language. Okay, so moving along. So with language comprehension, remember, as we are tying the rope together, when we are looking at language background knowledge, we are actually looking at, are there facts in this assignment, or are there facts and concepts that are used in this in answering the exam question? Just to alert you, please remember that with exam preparation, you also need to, it's important that you do utilize the authors from your study guides. So don't just always write your own opinion, but you need to start showing the lecturer that you are prepared and you've read. Okay. So there's vocabulary, there's breadth, there's precision, there's links that you are making. And I did highlight that of those of you who were not at the previous workshops, if you want to utilize or have a bit of more understanding on what we call PEEL, you are more than welcome to utilize, to actually request for the slides, and you'll be able to see how is it that we try and link your work together. Okay, so your language structures looks at your syntax, your semantics, looks at how's your language structured. Is it flowing? Is the grammar correct? Okay. Then we look at your verbal reasoning. So your interference, your metaphors, what type of writer are you? Are you a descriptive writer? Do you just write and link work together? Depends on your flow, what actually works for you. Then there's literacy knowledge. Literacy knowledge is where you use, remember we spoke about visualization. You get those people that who are visual, so you can look at print concepts. Or literacy knowledge, we look at different genres, different categories of the particular topic you're looking at. Okay. Sorry. Then with word recognition, you're looking at phonological awareness. So you're looking at your syllables, your homophones. So word recognition just simply speaks to, you know, if in your particular answering, you know, let's say you're studying English, you know, you need to, maybe they'll ask you to actually follow syllables and make sure that you use certain homophones. Just depends on the actual instruction that is given. Decoding. So decoding is just basically unpacking work or your actual instruction. So you look at alphabetical principles, your spelling, is it correct? Sight recognition, are you using familiar words? You know, are you familiar with the words that are being used here? So I don't recommend students to use jargon or words that we call them marmalade words, meaning that it's just, maybe I can just say, you know, it's informal what I'm about to say. Excuse me, but most people use it like bombastic words. Don't always use that, because sometimes it's out of context, and other times it doesn't impress the lecturer if you don't understand what you're writing about. Okay. So that is the rope. Okay. And this is just more colorful. So the previous slide was not colorful. It was just in black and white. And just for those of you, I've made an option to say that, let's say when you do request for the slides and you find that, you know what, the colorful slides, you know, they resonate more with me, then it's fine. But it just shows you how the actual rope, all right, so how the actual rope of being a skilled reader comes together. Okay, so being a skilled reader doesn't come overnight. It comes over practice and over time. So these are just the building blocks that I'm sharing to say that in order for you to be an effective skilled reader, what is important and what is required of you. Okay. I'm nearly done, so I'm just going to share the last slide of the rope. So the last slide of the rope is now, the sim is to provide you with a summary, a simple overview of reading. Is, remember, you are decoding, you are unpacking what is being said, and then in order for you to understand, meaning that you have language comprehension. And then once you have language comprehension of what the instruction is, you are able to read and further answer the exam question or the assignment question that is being asked. Okay. Part of what forms part of decoding or comprehension for you to understand is that, you know, we looked at the different types. We looked at phonological awareness, sight word recognition, right, in order for the rope to be tied. And then we looked at vocabulary, we looked at background knowledge, we looked at language structures, literacy knowledge, and verbal reasoning. Your own input, and that ties the rope together for you to be a skilled reader. And you know, yeah, so that those are the two types of ropes that you need in order to be an effective reader. So we are nearly done. I'm just going to provide the next few slides just about to understand, you know, one might ask, you know, to say that, yes, I hear all about the reading ropes, about, you know, the fundamentals of how do I become a strategic, I mean, a good reader, you know, in unpacking work, but how does my brain work when it comes to this? So with reading, you know, we have what we call the frontal lobe. So that's the front of your forehead. The temporal lobe is by your ear. The parietal lobe is just behind, just nearly, it's actually in the middle of your head. And then the occipital lobe is just beneath your neck. Okay, so different parts of speech, or you know, actually affect your brain. So maybe you might ask, oh, but how does that happen? So remember, we have the left side and the right side of the brain. So with reading, you're actually utilizing the left hemisphere, meaning that the left side of the brain. Okay, so with your frontal lobe, that's where, if someone is speaking, your speech sounds, that's how you know, that's where you have your reasoning. That's seated in your frontal lobe. Just a little bit of crash biology here. And then with your temporal lobe, that's by your ear, that's where the brain is. It's usually, if you're trying to digest or actually learn a new concept, your temporal lobe, that is where you find your language comprehension. Also, on the bottom part of your temporal lobe as well as your occipital lobe, you get what we call a letter word recognition. So it's words or letters that you've heard before. So let's say with this particular workshop, there are certain words that you've heard before. What will happen is it goes into your subconscious brain, and then in future, when someone mentions this word, your bottom temporal lobe as well as your occipital lobe will be able to recognize, oh, but I've heard this before, you know. So that's how it happens, okay? And then your parietal lobe, that's where you analyze words, your symbols. This is where you're making connections and your predictions. So this is just crash biology to say that the front and the back of your left hemisphere part of the brain, how does it work, and you actually understanding language, reading, and how does it come together. Okay, I'll continue again. So you might ask me, but how does the left and the right work? So the left and the right brain, we call it brain lateralization, have different functions in terms of being a human being. So with your left brain, like that is the one that I was telling you about this is where we read and we make most of what our functions. So with your left brain, this is if you're thinking analytically, that's the part of the brain that you're using. So excuse me, so you are being, let's say you're being more cautious, you're trying to plan an event, you're trying to plan an assignment, writing an assignment, that's you using your left brain. Having logic, you know, you're trying to interpret or trying to think of an idea, you're using more of your left brain. If you're right field vision, let's say you're more of a right-hand person, you're using more of your left brain. And then your right side motor skills. So your right side motor skills, remember your brain works, sometimes some of these functions, they cross each other. So your right side motor skills, so for you to pick up a spoon on your right side, you actually use your left brain. And then for your brain to lift up a spoon on your left side, you use your right brain. So it actually crosses together, okay? But this is just crash biology so that you are aware of when we speak about brain lateralization, which part of the brain works, okay? Okay, so also with your left brain, just to look a little bit up, you're looking at sequencing, you're looking at your verbal, when you're having a discussion in the chats, you know, formal discussion, you're using more of your left brain, okay? Then if you're detailed orientated as well, let's say you are a person who's very focused and detailed, you use more of your left brain than your right brain, okay? You do use both sides of the brain hemispheres, but you tend to find that others tend to use more left than right. And then your left brain is more for people that are very formal, maybe like your accountants. And then your artists use more of your creative side, so that's the right side of the brain, okay? So brain lateralization for the right, we are looking at random sequencing. So random sequencing is just if any information is placed anyhow, you are able to make sense of it. Emotional thought. So if you're feeling, you know, you're emotional, you utilize more of your right side. Non-verbal, if you're maybe quiet, but you're thinking in your brain, you're using more of your right brain. You're adventurous, you're an impulsive person, you are using more of your right side. And like I did say, that if you're a creative person, you're arty, you can dance well, you're using more of your right brain. If you're a person who lives in your head, you imagine a lot of things, and you're a visual person, you use more of your right side. And I did explain about how the brain works to switch motor skills. Motor skills is you moving, it's you lifting a spoon or lifting any object, lifting your foot. Your brain works hand in hand with that, okay? Okay, I'm nearly going to be done. Just summarizing, if you can just take a look at the slides, the slide that I'm presenting here as well. Looks at the right side of the body and the left side of the body, or the brain rather, the right and left hemisphere. So just a summary again, maybe that one was just too picturey, had too many pictures. So your right brain is more artistic. You're looking at hearing, insight, reading, music. So if you're a musical person, you know, you're using more of your right side of the brain. And then if you're a mathematical person, more an accountant focused, you're using more of your left side of the brain. Okay. Okay, so we've looked at the slide about the comprehension strategies. We looked at, just in summary, we looked at how do you predict, you read, you clarify, you ask questions. In terms of reading strategies, what is important? Okay. Okay, and then now another concept, it's just the same as what is reciprocal reading. Basically, it's just you looking at how do you summarize, question, clarify, and predict. We've looked at this earlier on, just a summary now of maybe providing you with a little bit of in-depth information as to what we had covered earlier. Okay, so with strategic reading, we have covered it again, just to look at different ways of how do you review, do you ask questions, do you answer most of what is required of you as a student, okay? Okay, then in summary, we also looked at before reading, during, after, what is it that you need to do? So in terms of when you're recapping or selecting a reading strategy, okay? And then we also looked at, again, when it comes to reading, before reading, during reading, after reading, what is it that you need to do? Okay. Remember just shortly that after reading work, you need to clarify, ask questions, summarize, make notes, okay? That's what we suggested. Then we also looked at selective reading, but I'm going to ask that you can take a look at that particular slide and Then we looked at the types of reading that one can look at. Is you can scheme, meaning that you can scan your work, you can read specific information, get a gist of what is being said. You can look at extensive reading. You can do a little bit of research. Are you reading for pleasure, for understanding? And then also intensive reading is that you're reading to get a bit of more details into the actual work that you need to get information in order for you to answer a specific assignment question. Then with my last slide, we have the reading types, where we have reading slides, where we have intensive reading, extensive reading, scanning, scheming. Those are just the different types of readings that you can do in order to actually get the actual understanding, in order for you to answer, whether it's an exam question, assignment, or for you to understand what you're reading. So today I've just given a highlight of reading strategies, ways in which one can look at improving their reading. How do we go about it, and what are the blocks that we utilize in order for you to become a more efficient and a better reader? So I'm done. That is all from me today.